family and friends. Welcome to the first podcast from the Green Shoe team. We are excited and we are all here. So I want to kind of jump off and introduce our team that you see. I'm going to let Miss Teresa Deck get us started. She is our clinical director. Teresa, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Good morning. I'm Teresa Deck. I'm a licensed professional counselor, and I've been here at Green Shoe for almost 4 years. I'm the clinical director, and I have over 27 years experience in the mental health field, and I just love what we get to do here at Green Shoe, providing our retreats for individuals, and I've worked in nonprofit organizations, at a community mental health center, and at various other organizations, and I love what we get to do here at Green Shoe. Welcome to today's podcast.
Great, thanks Teresa. Miss Rebecca, why don't you go?
Hi, I'm Rebecca Holt. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm also an EMDR trained therapist, which stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy. I've been here for almost 2 years. Before here, I spent about 10 years doing individual therapy, group therapy, really specializing in trauma. So when I came to Green Shoe and we were taking a look at trauma, it was a great fit for me.
Great. Thanks, Rebecca. One of our newer members, Jonathan, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jonathan Prince. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm pretty new with Green Shoe, but prior to being at Green Shoe, I've also worked at inpatient as well as outpatient programs for community mental health as well, some contract and even some private practice.
Great, thank you. And last, definitely not least, Steve.
I am Stephen Brinkworth. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've been at Green Shoe for about 2.5 years now. Before working at Green Shoe, I worked for about 5 years in inpatient psychiatric hospitals, also had some work in community mental health, and absolutely love doing groups. That's what we focus on with Green Shoe, and love the work that we get to do and help individuals heal and move forward in their lives.
Great, thank you, Steve. And I'm Stephanie Cochran. I am the executive director here with Green Shoe. I've been here since August, and I've absolutely loved the work that we get to do and everyone that we get to help and support. Like many of you, we all back in March had to suspend our groups and start a work from home process due to COVID-19. So through that, we've kind of all brainstormed, haven't we, and kind of talking about how we still can stay connected and reach out. And the idea of doing a podcast kind of came out of some of that brainstorming. So basically, here we are. This is something that we want to be as a resource for anybody, conversations about what is going on in our world today, conversations about Green Shoe, and about things that we can offer, to anyone that is dealing with any kind of mental health difficulties and struggles and things that they are dealing with in their life. If you don't know about Green Shoe, we are a mental health facility. We do 5-day intensive weekly retreats that deal with adults 21 and older who are struggling with relational trauma, codependency, depression, anxiety. What else, guys? What am I leaving out?
Addictions.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that is kind of our focus. But today, we really kind of want to focus on what we're all experiencing. Again, dealing with the quarantine, the stay at home, and with COVID-19. So I'm going to kind of just throw this out there to the team. Guys, what have y'all been hearing from people you're working with the community that have been some of the biggest struggles in dealing with COVID-19?
I think one of the biggest things that we've seen is adjusting to the change, because there's been such a change worldwide. There's been a change in our nation. There's been a lot of loss and grief and death, and there's been a lot of loss in individuals' lives, loss of going into work every day. So I think that the changes and they have been huge changes, not just little easy changes. These are significant changes in our everyday life. That's the biggest thing, adjusting to the changes.
Yeah, that's absolutely something.
One thing I've been hearing about is the stress that's going on. It really impacts our relationships. So hearing about, conflict at work, maybe there's a higher level of stress, conflict at home if you're at home, stress with your partner or your kids. And so just dealing with a different level of stress, because we're all experiencing it, and how we're relationally experiencing that stress has been one.
True. It's totally different than just from what we would consider our normal daily stress and anxiety.
Absolutely.
There's been a higher level of all of that everybody's coping with.
Similar to what Teresa and Rebecca have already spoken to with the change and the stress, one thing that I've also heard and experienced is that home is no longer just home. There's oftentimes a workspace at home as well as a classroom for those of us that have kids. And so there's been a shift within what does home look like, and how does that time for me at work versus with my family versus with my kiddo being in school, and how do I get that separation to be able to have downtime, take care of what I need to for me.
That's a great point.
The loss of feeling of safety, I think, is another huge piece. And when Steve was talking, I was thinking about safety in home, safety when we go out to the grocery store. Are we feeling safe in ourselves? And many times we are not. And when we go out, we get that feeling of fear instead of I'm safe, because we never thought about touching things or breathing on people before. And so our sense of safety has changed.
That's a great point.
Well, Teresa, thinking about that sense of safety, another piece that comes up for me in thinking about that is that change in what connection looks like, and how even with some of my closest family members, hugs have something that hasn't been able to be shared during this time. And so that physical connection has been a piece that's been missing for a lot too.
Absolutely.
Right. The fact that, we're such social creatures, and the number one thing is the social distancing, and not just the 6 feet, but the staying at home, not being able to see people. I am hearing it's very difficult. Jonathan, what do you think? What have you heard?
I've heard a few different things. One in particular is the employment situation. With unemployment being on the rise, it's impacted so many people that I've seen around me, with the uncertainty of when are the jobs going to start showing up again? When are these employers going to start reaching out and going to be able to start hiring people again? We've lost a lot of workforce, and I know that's taken a huge hit, especially when we so much identify with what we get to do each day. And if I'm not getting to live in that purpose each day, what does that say about me? Who am I? You know what I mean? And so we're seeing a lot of that happen. In addition to that, the students that got their academic year cut short, they didn't get a prom, they didn't get a graduation, and so how do we make concessions for that, for these students that are used to these norms, of getting to celebrate, getting to have these get-togethers, whether it's a birthday party or a celebration of some kind. We can't do any of that. So we've tried to find ways around that, and that's been very impactful.
It's funny how you'll spend your whole high school and even college career waiting for that senior year and those big moments, and then you don't get to have them. So yeah, that's been very impactful. What about for you guys? I know we talked about this, but what's been most impactful for you personally?
When Jonathan was talking about the loss of purpose, when we have not been able to complete our groups, our retreats at Green Shoe, that has really impacted me in a significant way, because that had been my life for the last 3.5 years. And then not being able to do that has created a lot, an increase in sense of loss and grief and sadness that I can't do that. So I've noticed that, and having to stay attuned to how I'm dealing with that sadness and how I'm coping with that. So that's a significant thing that I've seen, that loss of being able to do what I loved doing. It's hard. It's really been difficult.
Yeah. It's been hard for me not seeing you guys every day. Here we are in Zoom, but yeah, it's been hard to not have those connections, with my work family. That's been very difficult.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
I was going to say, I often share on Mondays that one of my addictions or compulsions is staying busy to cope with stress. And here we are with a lot of idle time of nowhere to go, you know, and working at home during a crisis. And you can only be busy so much. And so I've struggled with not being busy, just being present. And that can be a real challenge.
I think for me, one of the things I've noticed is similar to what Teresa mentioned with that disconnect from being at work and being engaged in groups and finding that purpose and connection, and that looks very different right now. The other piece, thinking about what you mentioned, Stephanie, with missing getting together.
Yeah.
When I get together with people now, or if I'm by myself going to the grocery store, in a state where people wave, people nod, people smile, I don't see anything that's going on with anybody's facial recognition of me or me towards them, because there's a barrier, there's a wall between me and the people that I'm around when I leave my house.
Yeah.
The mask is a barrier, as Steve said, and it prevents us from getting sick or getting somebody else sick, but it also prevents seeing their whole face and connecting to them, their body, because we're creatures of habit, and we learn to connect by people by watching their bodies. And so when we can't see that, that is very disconnecting feeling.
Yeah. What about you, Jonathan? How has this kind of impacted you personally?
Speaking to the connection piece, I mean, I'm huge on connection, and it was really impactful for me when I came into the realization I couldn't even hug my own parents. You know, when they came by to see me one day, and we were so far apart, and I had this instinctual feeling to want to reach out and hug them, and I couldn't. And that's when it really hit me, and I just had the sadness of, wow, this is real, you know, and this is painful, you know, and so it was very painful to miss out on that intimacy that you get to have with friends and family, where you're used to hugging. We've talked about shaking hands, and we've moved away from that. You know, you can't even shake hands, and there's so much power in our ability to connect with people just with a physical handshake. And you can't even get close to people. Right, yeah, touch is gone. And I think the other piece that's impacted me is I've had to really focus on being more intentional, because I think what I've seen for myself as well as others is it's easy to move into this state of non-structured living. You know, all that's been taken away. And so if you don't create a structure, you just kind of feel discombobulated. I mean, everything just kind of feels, you know, what day is it? What's going on? You know, and so not having that routine or that schedule, if I'm not intentionally doing that, it's easy to default into a state of just, and then you experience that guilt because you're used to being busy. You're used to doing something, you know, so.
Purpose. Yeah. And I know as a team, we kind of tackled this first off about, well, how are we going to cope? You know, and I think that's one of the biggest questions that we've had posed to us. I know over the last couple months, people, you know, calling in, you know, we've been asked by local news organizations, things like that, about how do you cope with stress and anxiety? So that's kind of been one of our biggest topics. And I want us to kind of share things that we've talked about, tips, strategies, and kind of even what's worked, you know, for us. And Jonathan, you mentioned a big one that just for me personally, but that we've talked a lot about is routine. You know, even though we've had our quote normal routine different, it's important that we schedule that. We schedule our work time, we schedule our family time, get up in the morning, you get ready and kind of do some of those. So I know routine has kind of been one of those key factors that helps manage the additional stress and anxiety that we're seeing. What other tips and tricks, guys, are we?
One of the things that I found that's been very helpful is just being aware and being present, not checking out, but staying with where I am. And I mean that internally, where am I? That's what am I thinking? What am I feeling? And what am I noticing in my body? Do I notice my shoulders up like this? Or can I relax them? And can I take deep breaths? Can I connect with what I'm feeling? So staying present and aware has very much helped me in this time of being home so much by myself. And so just being aware of where I am, who I am, what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, and being okay with it. Accepting whatever it is and not being critical of myself. I'm feeling afraid because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. That's okay, because that fear is a very normal part of our brain structure, because fear protects us. So accepting whatever I feel, so being aware of who I am and what I'm thinking and feeling has been very helpful for me.
Mm-hmm. Rebecca?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi, Steve.
I was just going to share that one thing that's been helpful for me is to have a time when things happen.
Mm.
And when the quarantine started, it interrupted what my internal clock was telling me I was supposed to be doing at those times during the day. Not just with work, but what time do I eat meals? What time do I go to bed? What time do I get up? And so having some pieces that are scheduled has been helpful too. But I've also found that having some, not projects to stay busy, but some self-care pieces that I really enjoy that have a start, a middle, and an end. I feel like I've been a part of something that has begun and ended, and it's not just open-ended, where I've noticed that starting a puzzle that went on for a week was another part of something that just went on indefinitely without a period of time that was helpful to me.
Mm-hmm.
Another piece that I found more helpful, doing some pottery. I've got a potter's wheel, and to get supplies even look different now because of quarantine, and had to place an order over the phone and pick it up outside the building to bring it back home. But to be able to go through the process of setting it up, sitting down to work with my hands and get involved in something. And then the cleanup. That's something that helped to close that piece so that it's not open-ended, and that really a sense of closure that felt really comforting. Felt really comforting that there was a beginning, a middle, and an end, and something that I could connect with.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
One thing for me that, I mean, you know, because seeing people be kind to others has been so healing, I think, for all of us, you know, helping seniors feel special, even though they're not getting a graduation, you know, extending that kindness, even to people in a grocery store. It feels like there's a wave of kindness that people have been extending, but I think it's also important to extend that to yourself. And that's been huge for me, because those times that, you know, I can only alphabetize the spice rack so many times. But those times that I am just present and just being and not busy, I've got to extend that kindness and compassion to myself. And that's been huge for me. And I think for others.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point, because that even connects back to what Teresa said,
Mm-hmm.
with being aware of what's going on inside ourselves and making sure that kindness is being extended to ourselves as well as everyone else. Jonathan, what recommendations would you have for someone dealing with the heightened sense of stress and anxiety?
The best word that comes to mind for me is the word intentional. Because if I don't live intentionally, meaning I'm not planning my day proactively, then I tend to live my day more reactively. And I'm just as guilty as anyone, I can live in distractions. And that's a non-productive place to be in. And so when I'm living intentionally in my day, what that looks like for me is making a plan to do something and having a set time of doing it. And for me, what I found is either the beginning of the day or the end of the day, start with something very positive. Like I like to do daily devotionals. And so I'll get in my Bible app, and for whatever reason, there's something in there that I always get that feeds me, and it starts the day off in the right way, and it starts that way of thinking and everything in the right direction. And so just getting in the Word and studying that, and being intentional in that, and making a habit of that really helps get things in a good direction for me.
Yeah. And all of these are things, again, to help us deal, you know, some of us already deal with high stress and anxiety. I know some people, this is the first time that they've all of a sudden had the heightened sense. and not even having those coping skills already kind of in their bag of tricks in dealing with. You know, one thing too that I've heard a lot and read a lot about as far as when you read about tips for dealing with anxiety is exercise, getting out. And we've done a lot of training with looking at, you know, the body and mind connection and making sure that, you know, you're moving your body, you're getting out. It's, at least here it's been nice. You know, we've been able to get outside, and the weather and connecting with nature, I think, is so important. And that's kind of one of those things. But with all of this, okay, so Teresa, wrap us up a little bit. With all of this, for somebody listening, what is one thing you would recommend that they can do this week to help, especially when you're talking about that mindfulness and getting themselves connected?
I think the one thing that would be really significant and helpful for individuals is to pay attention to your breathing and to intentionally slow down your breath at certain times during the day. Take out 3 or 4 times, start out with, and just pay attention to slowing down your breathing. Pay attention to internally, breathing in slowly through your nose and slowly blowing out through your mouth, because that will connect you to your body and it will slow down your sense of maybe fear or whatever it is, and you can connect better and be aware of what's going on with yourself. So breath work, breathing, I think is the first indication that I need to slow down and pay attention to my breathing. Because you know what exercise does? When you said exercise, I was thinking it increases your breathing.
Right.
It increases your breath work. When we sing, we're using our breath work, you know, because singing is very helpful, expressing that joy and gratefulness. So, but breath work, breathing, I think very basic, can help you get back in touch with yourself.
And we all know the great land of YouTube, right? So if you need help with that, there's great
Yes.
meditations and, you know, 2-minute, 3-minute meditations that just help you focus on your breathing. There's apps now on your phone that
Yes.
tell you when to stop and breathe for 30 seconds. So you're absolutely right, kind of getting into that. Well, guys, thanks. This is fun, you know,
Yes.
and plus I just love seeing everybody's faces and us getting together. So we're going to do this again next week. Now, somebody you don't see today is our awesome support, Amanda, who's our social media. She's in the background. She is going to be putting up some things on Facebook to kind of help promote about this podcast, but we want to make this be about questions, which you guys want to hear. So go to our Facebook, you can message us, you find these posts, send us questions, especially on what you guys are dealing with right now. What do you need help with? I've got the experts, so they're here. We'll help, you know, with anything. If you need us, go to greenshoe.org. That's our website. You can get more information about our programs. You can also, there's ways to connect with us there. If you need an email, we'll be here. So thanks for listening, episode 1, and we will see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye, guys.